sad.
You cover some of these problems in your books.
Yeah.
But how frustrating is it for you, and how infuriating is it as a man who's a veteran, who's served, who's been deployed overseas, who's been in these conflicts, to see this happening and to see no accountability and to see these poor choices being made over and over again that put veterans' lives at risk, put our lives at risk, and put the entire world in this state right now where we're genuinely concerned about nuclear war, which we haven't been since the 80s.
Right.
The fall of the Soviet Union was this great moment in history where we're like, oh, Jesus, we're done.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, Soviet Union is now Russia. It's like they have elected leaders. Everything's going to be great. And
Yeah, no, it's tough because you lose friends over there. People lose arms, legs, in wheelchairs. They sacrifice so much, and they're trusting those senior level leaders to make good decisions, politicians and military leaders. And then they see what happens over there, and so it's very natural to ask that question: Was it all worth it? What were we doing over there for all these years, for 20 years?
Yeah.
So it's very natural to ask that question. And for my own sanity, I just go back to taking those lessons learned and applying them going forward in a way that honors the sacrifice of those who did lose their lives, who didn't come home, or who came home changed forever because of post-traumatic stress or traumatic brain injury, missing arms and legs. And my hope, and I hate to say hope, is that we can take those lessons and apply them to the next generation so they don't have to learn those same lessons in blood. But I guess I'm not hopeful because we have shown time and time again that we have a very difficult time doing that for some reason, and I don't know why that is, but it's extremely disheartening. And it also sets up that next generation for failure because you have these people coming up the ranks, and they see these generals sit in front of Congress, say certain things. You can go back to every single testimony from these guys, and they all say pretty much the same thing: we're making progress. We just need more money. We need more time.
And privately, what were they saying?
They were saying that this is a disaster. Yeah. And you can go back and look at these. And Greg Wilcox spells it all out. He has the transcripts in there. And there's one, and I forget who it is right now, an exact time, but it's around the 2009, 2010 timeframe where there's one senior level official who's in charge of Afghanistan. He doesn't even say anything bad. He's just kind of like, it's not going as great as we may have led you to believe. And then a few months later, he is quietly moved aside and somebody else is put in. So that tells everybody else coming up behind them that, hey, if they want to get this next star and they want to sit on the board of company X, Y, or Z, they better toe this line. And it's an industry.
Is that an issue where the amount of money that's involved in it now because of the military-industrial complex is almost, it's like you can't turn that back now because you've turned on that spigot, the amount of money is continuing to flow. These coffers are filling. These people are making so much money. To stop it now and to hold people accountable and to try to put an end to this chain of failure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a huge bureaucracy. It's an ecosystem that includes politicians. It includes military leaders, both in uniform and just out sitting on these boards, lobbyists, permanent Washington. It's all a part of this huge infrastructure that is moving forward. And just like any company, you got to show profits.
It's just crazy that less than 100 years ago, Eisenhower warned us about this. Mm-hmm. At the end of World War II, when he's leaving office, he warned us about it in the 50s and said there is a military-industrial complex. And the crazy thing is that speech at that time aired on television. And people, remember it. They had a sense of it. But it wasn't until the internet where you could pull up that speech at any moment you wanted to on YouTube and just play his words, which is such an incredible resource. I mean, we have access to history instantaneously in a way that's never existed before, and we seem to be learning less.
I know. It's one of those dichotomies that is it's very odd. And we all thought when you could carry the internet around in your pocket with that first iPhone, I mean, you thought, when we have a discussion and someone says, no, it's this, it's this. Guess what? We don't have to argue about it. We can look it up right here. And it's going to be great because we can solve all these arguments immediately. And what did it do? Well, it just snowballed into this thing where it divides us even further rather than someone saying, oh, look, I was wrong. Oh, yeah, it says it right here. Yeah. No, it just divides us even further. And of course, advent of social media, it's a tool. And any tool can be used for productive purposes or as a weapon. And we have weaponized social media for sure to divide. And who benefits? Well, politicians that need to galvanize bases, of course, and the social media companies themselves who have lobbyists in Washington who pay a lot of money to these politicians. And it's a whole ecosystem. And so being aware of it, I think, is the first step. So for our kids, I talk about it with them, and I always ask the question, how am I being manipulated here, which is kind of a cynical way to look at things, but you kind of have to today. And then with the advent of AI, that's a whole another side of it, like figuring out what is truth and what is not, and what's been made up, and what podcast is real and what's not. It's a crazy situation, but I want the kids to know that even if they're following somebody on social media, like a person, that's an advertisement for that person and their life. And you can see time and time again, beautiful families out there, and they're showing, here we are in Aruba or whatever, and here we are with our Easter photo together. And then the next week there's their divorce and there's abuse and there's all, and it's like, but this whole thing was all a farce.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so that's an advertisement, just like a company.
When I see someone doing something like that, I always assume that you're trying to sell me something.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, why are you trying to sell me your relationship so good?
Exactly. Well, how am I being manipulated right here?
It's one thing, it's Mother's Day. She's such a great mom. Okay. Yeah. But how many days a week are you doing that?
Right.
You have the perfect family, you have the perfect life, you have the perfect this. It's like you're trying to sell it to people instead of just living it. And it's a very weird thing that we're doing that never existed before, so there's no real roadmap of how to navigate it correctly.
Exactly. It's kind of like when you have a psychologist or a psychiatrist on, and they're really getting into your life maybe, or they're out there giving advice, giving all this advice, and then you find out that in the background they're a total disaster, and they're a crazy person. That happens more often than not. Sorry to psychologists and psychologists out there, but it's true.
Oh, it's very true. I mean, there's a lot of doctors out there that are extremely unhealthy. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on in this world where there's people that are experts in giving advice, and they
I know, it's tough.
I think about that a lot when I talk. I'm like, man, better not be full of shit.
I know, it's tough. And how are you supposed to check all this? It's a full-time job checking on this stuff, and it's wild. But for the kids, it's the toughest. Like, our daughter just missed it. She's 17, so she got a little bit of it, but I think she
grew up with the internet.
She grew up with the internet, but she didn't grow up with the amount of input that these kids are getting now at age 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Exactly.
Yeah.
She just missed that.
Yeah.
So our little guy, who is 12, is hitting that side, and they're pretty sly. Our little guy out there, he's a smart one, so he can figure out ways around the blocks and all these other sorts of things. So it's interesting time for parents, tough time I think for parents, and tough time for kids.
I think it's always been a tough time for parents and always been a tough time for kids. And these are just unique challenges that exist, but every era has unique challenges. Yeah. What I'm worried about is this stuff that we're talking about in terms of accountability with the military-industrial complex, and I don't know how that turns around.
I don't know.
Other than some catastrophic disaster.
Right.
And the catastrophic disasters that we're talking about are nuclear. And if there's a nuclear disaster, it's that Einstein quote, I don't know what weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with rocks and sticks.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard that quote before.
I might have paraphrased it. I'm sure I did.
Yeah.